you want to talk about drought, we can do that. If you want to talk about whatever. So just get ready for that. And we're going to spend about an hour and a half, and then we'll see where it takes us. There are men and women, and young and old, that are carrying purple sashes, purple bags, and purple garments. And they're advocating for solutions to this extraordinary problem that confronts all of us. And they're successful. You saw the little thing I did on the floor. We've been doing that on a regular basis. Next week I'll go back on the floor and we'll take it up again. And it works. Lobbying really works. We, this year, we added $400 million to the $600 million of Alzheimer's research. We're just a little, that doesn't quite add up, but we're a little under $1 billion of research. You couldn't see those charts, but the cancer research is somewhere $6.5 billion, heart research about $5.5 billion, and HIV/AIDS somewhere around $3 billion. And Alzheimer's, which, as you heard in that tape, is going to surpass all of them in terms of expense. So, can we deal with this? Can we solve it? The answer is we can improve the situation. We're all going to die. And the question is, what is the process that we go through to get there? And Alzheimer's is a tough one. It wasn't our family. It went on for a decade. In the last 3 years, we're in our home. Other families, the experience varies, but it always has an end. And in between the beginning and the end, it can be very difficult and very, very expensive. But there's promise out there. There's actually the opportunity to find some progress. Some drugs were developed years ago, maybe 12, 15 years ago. They were tested and they were found not to work. And then a statistician went back studying the statistics of those drug studies and came across a little statistical anomaly. And in the group of people that were tested with the drug, there was one set that seemed to have an improvement. So they did a little statistical analysis and found that that particular group happened to be a group that was suffering very early onset. And the administration of the drug extended the well-being of the individuals for a considerable period of time. So with that piece of information, I went back and they're now in the process of looking at this whole situation from the point of view not of whether the drug works, but when can the drug work. And there's a whole series of drugs that are in that particular class, and they seem to have promise of extending the well-being. In other words, as I said on the film, slowing down the progression of the illness. At the moment, it doesn't stop it, but it's on a path. It's on a path that may lead to a good end. And some of the other things you saw on the film are exceedingly important, and one of them is where you happen to be at this moment. Senior centers. Senior centers are extremely important because the process of community support, of activities of all kinds, and I see several activities around the room, including good food and nutrition, all of those things turn out to be very, very important, not just in holding the disease at bay, which it does, but also in the quality of life through the process of the disease. So these things are all parts of the puzzle. I started with this. I had a lot of trepidation about starting with this, but this being the 8th time we've gone through this process. It turns out that as much as we don't want to deal with it, we know that we do want to deal with it, and we know we must deal with this one. And so it also begins an important conversation about how we treat seniors in our communities. And that's what I really want to discuss with you and have some help in the process of discussing it with you. So let's do this. Let's go into a couple of presentations, actually 3 of them. I talked about food a moment ago. Tracy Thomas, you're here someplace. Where are you, Tracy?
I'm here.
There you go. Come on up here, Tracy. This is Meals on Wheels. which in this territory is a very, very important piece. Talk about Meals on Wheels, what it's all about, how it provides services, the challenges that you face, and any other thing you want to cover. Here you go, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I found this in the recent edition of ARC with Michael Douglas on the front cover. So I read it. And it says, there's more to hunger than going hungry. Every day, many older Americans sacrifice a meal to keep the lights on, pay the rent, or feed their family. In fact, more than 4.5 million adults aged 50 to 59 are food insecure, which increases their chance of developing chronic health problems. The link between hunger and health makes a bad situation for the hungry even worse. And he goes on to statistics for depression and diabetes because of the lack of food. And so, in 1972, Richard Nixon was the president who created, through the Older Americans Act, and established this program of Meals on Wheels, you know, basically mandating that we provide meals for anyone 60 and older, and fund those meals as well. And so, we deliver from this senior center about 5,000 Meals on Wheels a year. And all the senior centers that I know of and other organizations also deliver Meals on Wheels, and it becomes into the thousands. The challenge with this is funding. You know, it's always a really good friend of mine used to always say, it's not about the money, but it's about the money. And that's true with the funding for Meals on Wheels. We have limited funding for the Meals on Wheels program. We have to do it. We have to provide it to people in Glen Haven and in the Oaks, and they don't have to pay for it. We can encourage a donation, but I can tell you that for Meals on Wheels itself, it's the lowest donated, because the folks that we're taking food to are over 60, homebound, and many of them disabled. And not everybody has an IHS worker. So Meals on Wheels programs in March come together to try to raise funds and do fundraisers and try to incite people to give money just to this program. And so between Monday, March 21st and Friday, March 25th, that's when Meals on Wheels programs all across the country, they invite the congressmen and the senators and their assemblymen to ride along on Meals on Wheels, so that you put a face to the person who's receiving this meal to survive most of the time. I had a call from a guy the other day. We were giving him Meals on Wheels. He asked if I could give him $50 because his water had been turned off 4 months before because he had no money and he had no water. So we're giving him meals, but now he's calling me with a different issue, and I wasn't really able to help too much. So we'll be raising money during March. We're collecting donations, and we are allocating all of our donated funds to Meals on Wheels. Couple of things. We have bake sales every month. That money will go. We'll allocate that. We have a volunteer here that's doing taxes just for donations, and those will go. We have quilts in the back that we only are going to sell for Meals on Wheels funds. And all the generous donations that we get just from people like a friend of ours who came in today gave me a card for Easter with a $100 check for Meals on Wheels, just for that purpose. And so March 28th, we're going to have a breakfast fundraiser here at the Senior Center, trying to raise money for Meals on Wheels. And I'm just so excited to have this opportunity with Congressman Garamendi, working with Glenn and everybody, to have this here in this time to raise the awareness of what other seniors go through just to get a meal. So I hope you'll help us.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple more. Meals on Wheels provides the food, takes the food out to the homes. But a lot of folks, and earlier this morning when I was at the judge's breakfast, we talked about transportation issues. And I'd like now to have Carl Parker, Lake Transit. Carl?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Pleasure.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Carl Parker. I'm the Mobility Programs Coordinator for Lake Transit. I'd like to begin just simply by thanking Tracy and the Live Oak Senior Center for this opportunity to be together with you. I'd also like to thank Congressman Garamendi for being a supporter of public transit. You can actually go to his website and you can check it if you don't believe me, and you can see actually a specific piece about support for public transit and how important that is. When we think about how do we get from A to B to C to access things like the senior center, or things like medical care, or things like visiting family and friends, just social life, getting to church, those sorts of things are critically important. There are so many different directions that I want to go, especially after seeing that very moving film. But if you think about, Lake County. So here we are in Lake County. How many people here have actually used Lake Transit services? So quite a number. How many people depend on Lake Transit as a way of getting from A to B to C? That's some people. I know some of you because I used to drive the bus. And then they're moving to a desk. What's up with that? But I'm thinking, in my new position as Mobility Programs Coordinator, that I have an opportunity to do something which became very meaningful to me in the years that I was serving. I used to be a pastor in the Methodist Church in Clearlake and in Lower Lake. I did that for about 9 years. And then some stuff happened in my life, and some more stuff happened in my life, and my wife and I had to move back to Cobb because we were losing our house in Clearlake, and then the Valley Fire happened, and so if you see lightning on the horizon and you're anywhere near me, run away fast. But seriously, one of the things that my work in pastoral ministry involved was going.
That was the reason why I moved the table,
Good plan. Yeah, but when I was in pastoral ministry, one of the things that I did quite a bit was go to places like Meadowwood and hospitals and be with my people, and I saw that process and the strain and the struggle that was involved, and the challenge that people had just getting to their doctor to get help. And we have learned, and we're seeing and we're hearing about how the emergency room has become the de facto doctor's office for a lot of people. And why is that? Well, there are a lot of reasons why. I don't even begin to understand all of the reasons, but I know one reason has to do with the fact that people aren't able to get there. And whatever the situation is that's afflicting them progresses to the point where it's a 911 call, and it's an ambulance ride. And when we're talking about allocation of resources, I mean, that's a very spendy way to get some health care, and really late in the game very often. Then it's a matter of trying to fix problems on time. And that's just one little piece of it. So I want to express the appreciation that, a lot of times we like to sit around and complain about, what Congress is not doing, but not too long ago, Congress enacted some legislation to provide continued support for public transit. And a little known fact in Lake County is that over half of Lake County's Lake Transit services are funded by federal funds. So if those funds didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to serve the 376,000 people who took trips just on the fixed route service last year in Lake County. And here's a really interesting statistic for this particular place, that of those 376,000, about 21% were seniors. And what's interesting about that to me is that statistically, I think 18% or thereabouts of the population of Lake County is seniors. So we know that there are lots of seniors who are using the fixed route transit, but that doesn't include the dial ride services in Lakeport and Clearlake. And so we have another 12,000 people who are getting trips, about half of which are trips to the doctors just through that service. So we heard a little bit about what
Tracy said, well, you hear it's not about the money. In the aftermath of losing the house, right? The consoling thing that people like to say was, well, thank God you're alive, but all the rest of the stuff is stuff. Which just a takeaway for you is that it's not that consoling to say that to someone. It's not helpful. But the idea there is interesting because you can say, oh well, it's not stuff. So if you didn't have a car or you didn't have a friend with a car to help you get from A to B to C, to get here, to get to the doctor, get to the wherever, what would you do? And what that does is that speaks to the need for resources and funding to make these things possible. The work that we're engaged in, Tracy, Paul over here, and myself, we're in meetings all yesterday morning with the board of Lake Transit, the board of the Area Planning Council, and then a subcommittee of that, the Social Services Technical Advisory Council, working specifically on the problem of how do we solve this? How do we help people? How do we even know, who's not served right now? How do you know what you don't know? So that's a tough nut that we're trying to crack. And then how do we work together with other agencies, people services, the senior center, the senior centers in the county, tribal health, to network and to cooperate and coordinate and communicate so that there are many different ways that we can meet these needs more effectively, including getting people to medical care over in Santa Rosa, in Ukiah, Deer Park, San Francisco. Just to put a face on it, because we saw in the film and so forth, and I'll end with this. But so I talked to the group yesterday, I'm talking to the board, and I'm saying, so we talk about transportation challenged people. We talk about that a lot. Or we talk about homeless people. Or we talk about fire survivors or whatever, and they're sort of out there somewhere, sort of a generic thing, but what's really important is to think about a specific thing. So I can tell you a couple of stories very quickly. Just a couple of days ago, I got a call from a man, 81 years old, lost his house in Cobb, wondered if, actually it was his friend who helps him, wondered if he could get some help with transportation. He was evacuated to his daughter's home in Portland for 5 months, but he had been there long enough, I guess, I don't know the backstory of that, but it was time to come back to Lake County. He's renting a house in Lower Lake. He has Parkinson's and numerous other medical conditions. He needs to get to frequent medical. How is that going to happen? We do one of the simple, low-impact solutions that we found is we are just about to roll out a program called the Pay Your Pal program. And you'll be hearing, I'll be back over here asking if I could talk to you just specifically about that program. But what that program is if you needed a ride to get to your doctor or to get to church or to something like that, you could apply for that program. And once you're in the program, all you have to do is get a friend, or it even could be a relative who's willing to help you get there. And they then can be reimbursed 35 cents a mile for that trip. Now, there are those who are blessed that they don't need that kind of help, but there are an awful lot of people here in Lake County who have the heart to help other people. They really want to, but it's incredibly challenging. I have a person who's up on Cobb whose friend got relocated. She got relocated, but to another place that didn't burn on Cobb. Her friend who gives her rides is here in Clearlake Oaks. So that person who's on a fixed income, doesn't have much in the way of resources, is willing to pick her up, but it's really a hardship, even with low prices of gas. I mean, you all can understand that, I'm sure. But now, with that program, he can get mileage reimbursement, leaving Clearlake Oaks, going up to Cobb, then taking her to her doctor or wherever she needs to go, taking her back, and so forth. So in the beginning of this program, we started with the Valley Fire in the aftermath to help relocated people. We've now provided over 3,000 miles of transportation, about $1,000 of reimbursement just in that program. So I could go on and on and on and on and on. And where am I? I used to be a preacher, you know. Is this going to be a short term? But thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you. One more very, very important part of the puzzle of life here. Speaking of transportation, if you happen to own a late 80, early 90 Honda Civic, LX, if you could give one of my staff the keys, they'll turn your lights off. They'll be happy to walk out. They're accustomed to the rain. Okay. Margaret Medeiros. Margaret. And Margaret is with the water board. You're having a big day today, aren't you, Margaret?
Yes.
Lots of water.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tracy, for asking me to speak today. And it's an honor and privilege to be here and to explain a little bit about the water board. I wear many hats in this community, and the one that I am most proud of that I have achieved is that I am a senior citizen. Am I still here? I'm here. I'm alive. I'm alive, and I've got a few more years to go.
You're doing some pretty good work, too.
Thank you. My husband and I have lived here for 27 years in the Oaks, in the same house. And so we've seen many people come and go. We've seen a lot of things happen that were not making us very happy, and other things that do make us happy. The one thing with the Clearlake Oaks County Water District, we are a public utility, not privately owned. And so our board of directors is made up of 3 senior citizens, including me. As president, I do demand the Brown Act and the Robert's Rules of Order, and we're getting this thing together so well with your interest at heart as seniors, because that's our interest too. So we're the guardians of your rates and of your services and your customer service. I have Alan Gardner here today, our general manager, and he would be answering all of your questions. I refuse to answer questions. I want to be the good guy. I'll let him be the bad guy, okay? We have a mission statement that I'd like to read to you today. A lot of people really don't know much about the water board except that they get a bill and they're not real happy with it. So. Our mission is committed to providing safe, high-quality water services to our community while maintaining a standard of excellence in customer service, environmental conservation. We have a website, which is CLOCWD, very simple website, Clearlake Oaks Water District. And also, we have our meetings, are on the 3rd Thursday of the month at 4 o'clock at the water company. And I would encourage you to attend these meetings so that you can know what is happening. Right now, we're going after some pretty heavy grants to repair some much needed infrastructure within our district. We're applying for a $2.8 million grant from the state, and they have pretty much said, okay, if we obey their rules, then we will get that grant. And that's why I want you to know, I'm just going to one gentleman thing, your latest increase in your rates, that money must go to infrastructure and nothing else. Otherwise, we would not get any money from the state, and they're pretty strict. So we're abiding by that, and we're doing the best thing we can for you. And if you want your input, we have public meetings at 4 o'clock, the 3rd Thursday of the month. We encourage you to come, please. Thank you, and thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you very much, the fabric of the community, your local water district, the community organizations, Meals on Wheels, transportation pieces of it. These are the fabric. These are the pieces that create a community, together with all of you and others. And how do you hold it together? Well, you hold it together by sharing a common desire to have a great community. And that's not an easy task. It's a task that really requires your involvement. For me to do my work, I need your involvement. I need to know what's on your mind. I need to know of your issues, the problems that exist. Lake County is unique in many ways, unlike other parts of my district. This district stretches 200 miles up the Sacramento River. It begins at Benicia, the 680 bridge across the river, the Sacramento River at Benicia, and wanders through the Delta, following basically the Sacramento River, and then all the way to just short of Chico. If you happen to know where Hamilton City are, you're among the very select 237 people. But that's the northern end of the district. It goes from the top of the Sierras over on the eastern side all the way up to Snow Mountain here in this area. And so it is a huge district. It's a very, very complex district. But again, like this community, it is in many ways woven together with the fabric of communication, education systems, water issues, and very real human issues, some of which we have been focusing on here today, the health of the community. In Congress, you may think it's chaos. You're right. But it always has been. If you're a student of American history, you'll find that Congress has been chaotic. There's a certain stairway outside going up to the chamber in the Capitol. If you had come back to visit, we'll be happy to, or my staff, if they're giving you the tour, or I have happened to be doing the tour, we'll show you those steps as they go up to the Capitol. There's a series of brown spots on the first 4 or 5 steps going up. It's blood. It's where a congressman shot another congressman. Now, we don't allow guns in any longer, but there have been cane fights, there have been shootings, there have been some vicious and wild arguments. So back through the history, don't be surprised that today we have vigorous debates. And right now we're rather seriously divided in how to proceed. We obviously have some elections coming up, and those elections will, I think, help us understand the direction we're going to take the country. And so I'm sure all of you are paying careful attention to that. Since this is an official event, I won't get into politics here, but I'll simply tell you that we'll muddle through. This country always has. And in the process of that, we always come out better. We really do. And we've got a whole series of challenges. My own take on this is that we need to pay attention to the needs of people. And the senior population in America, and certainly the senior population in this district, has some very significant issues. We talked transportation. We just completed a new 5-year transportation bill, and it was a real struggle to make sure that the public transportation, transit public transportation, was in it. But together with Mike Thompson and others of us who represent rural areas, to say, good, we want public transportation. We think it's a very, very important thing. Certainly for climate change issues, certainly for access, for livable communities and all of those reasons, we need to have public transportation. You also need it for economic reasons, and in your rural communities, you simply need it for life itself. You're not into life or death issues. You talked about it, Greg. You talked about how people need to be able to access your transit to get to the emergency room or to the doctor, and for food. So these are all pieces of the puzzle. We have a 5-year bill, and there is a little bit more money in it for transit and for public transportation. But the whole thing is not enough. It's not enough to repair the potholes of this nation. But we did get one thing into the transportation bill, and that is that when a bus is purchased by the transit district, it's going to be an American-made bus. That your tax dollars are going to go to buy an American-made piece of equipment so that we can keep the economy going. This is part of what I've been advocating since the first day I got this job some almost 6.5 years ago, and that is make it in America. Rebuild our American manufacturing base, and along with it, the middle class, by making things in America once again. And one of the key things, this actually goes back, since we're into history, I'm into history. Okay, we're into history. Goes back to George Washington. George Washington came into office, talked to his Treasury Secretary. He said, Alex, I want you to develop a plan for the economy. And so Hamilton went off and pulled together a committee of 1 or 2 and wrote a 30-page plan on how to grow the American economy. And among the things that were in it, he said the American government should purchase American-made things. So right back to the very, very beginning of this nation, this is the first year of Washington administration. And the policy of making it in America was in that very first. So I'm with the family fathers here, thank you. One piece of the puzzle. It's how you weave together public policy so that you can have a transportation system, and so that the American economy not only is able to build the bus and make it available to Lake County, but that Lake County then has a way to get a senior to a medical appointment. So all of these things go together. On the healthcare side, I think you said this in passing. You said something about supportive services in the home.
Yeah, IHS.
Exactly. If you have that Alzheimer film, the Meals on Wheels, the transportation issues, one very, very critical piece of this whole web of how we take care of ourselves and our community and the men and women in it is in-home supportive services. And this is where someone from probably the local county agency or an agency that the county has hired provides services in the home. And it may be every day, it may be one day a week, it may be coming in to wash clothes and clean up, or it may be any number of medical services along the way. But it is an extraordinary important element in keeping people in their home as long as possible, where they have the familiarity of the home, the ease, the comfort of being in their own home, and it is a whole lot cheaper than in a facility. And so you actually save money while providing the services. Major battle in Washington over whether this is a good idea or not. You go, well, what's wrong with this idea? Well, it's a government program. We don't like government programs. We're going, well, do you like to pay for a nursing home? Or do you like to take care of a person in their home? So we have those kind of fights. And I think they're a really important piece of the puzzle. Now, what I'd like to do now is to hear from you. So if you've got a question or a concern, share it with me. Keep it as short as you can, and I'll keep my answers even shorter. So who wants to start with a question along the way? I think we got a couple of microphones along the way. At least we can share this one. It's always that way. Somebody always starts in the back row.
Thank you, Congressman. I'm Lourdes Seuss, and I live in Lucerne up the street here. And I appreciate like what our local transportation is doing about getting people to the medical appointments. I'm concerned about the lack of and the high turnover of our medical providers in the area. And so many of us are on Medicare, and the reimbursements for so many of our medical providers are very minimal, and the turnover of basic services or the limitation of services because they don't come here, our providers don't come. What's the answer? How is it being addressed? Thank you.
Kind of looking around the room here and seeing if anybody was at the judges meeting this morning. There you are. A couple of you were there. Interesting, this was the subject matter of the meeting this morning. I kind of roamed in sort of unannounced. So I heard that the meeting was coming on Thursday morning, so I went in. And I learned a great deal about this question. And the St. Helena Hospital, the general manager, the CEO, made a presentation. It was principally on the issue of recruiting to the community providers. And he had a big list. I don't know, I didn't bring it with me. I think I've got mine out of the car. A list of providers that are either here or will soon be coming. Doctors, nurse practitioners, physician health, and so forth, a whole series of them. My sense of it, there were two, listen, I'm speaking as an outsider here, and maybe some of you are on the board and know more directly about this, but just my sense, listening to the conversation, there were two sets of issues. One is the reimbursement rate. I'll go to that in a moment. The second was the facility and the support services for medical practitioners. And they talk about serious upgrades that are coming to the hospital, and that's part of the support service. And I think the word he used was a critical mass of providers so that they could support each other in the various specialties. And it's a clear strategy that he had on his mind and the administration of the hospital had on their mind to address that issue by trying to get that critical mass of physicians, nurses, physician assistants, and the like, so that they could support each other and make it easier to be a physician or a nurse practitioner in the community. That was one of their strategies, together with physical facilities. New dental facility, I think you talked about a new dental facility, new mammogram and so forth, things of that sort. Now, to the reimbursement side of it. This is a problem in communities, outlying communities, where the number of individuals that need services may not be large. And so the volume of care, the volume of services is part of the equation on the reimbursement rate. And the reimbursement rate is calculated based upon an average volume, which is probably not going to be seen in an outlying community and rural areas. And so what we've been trying to do basically the entire nation is to adjust the Medicare reimbursement rate to reflect not just the cost of living, which is probably going to be about maybe a little lower here because housing's lower, but to adjust to the requirements of that area. It's a very, very difficult process. This is clearly not San Francisco. And so this is part of it. Medi-Cal is another piece of this puzzle. And many of the seniors are on what we call dual eligible, Medi-Cal as well as Medicare. So those are together are the reimbursement. And there's a whole new mechanism of reimbursement coming into place for Medi-Cal and for Medicare. And it's the Kaiser model of reimbursement. It is called a capitated rate. So many dollars per person in the group. And the reason it works and is happening is that there's a very serious incentive to keep the individual healthy. Now in Medicare, part of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was a free annual checkup for seniors. It has turned out to be an exceedingly important cost saving. You spend a little bit of money up front to give a health care checkup. Now let's see here. Your pulse rate, oh my God. Your heart, your blood pressure, diabetes, the things that are very, very expensive and long lasting, you can get ahead of them. You got high blood pressure, a few dollars a day. You keep the blood pressure down, avoid a stroke, which is extraordinarily expensive. Not just for the immediate Medicare, but for the long-term care that comes from the stroke. Similarly with diabetes. And so you're looking at those chronic illnesses, and we've had across the nation, extraordinary success in driving down the cost of Medicare, in large part by this new concept of let's stay healthy. Okay, I'm going to take another question, and we can go around and around. This side of the room, we'll go to the middle. We'll work our way in this direction.
As you know about the three triad defense item, land, water, submarines, and air. And there's an effort about to remove the land-based missiles. This is concerned citizens, scientists, just last month had an article on that. But other people have too. But yet Congress is evidently okay to redo 3 of the missiles that are in silos, plus design 2 more on a policy of which you're going to be getting rid of in the future. So left hand know the right hand is doing.
Thank you. You've taken us in an entirely different direction. Many of you didn't hear the question. I did. I'm on the House Armed Services Committee. I'm on the Strategic Arms Committee, as in nuclear, and missiles are my daily task of all kinds. The specific question that was asked had to do with the land-based ballistic missiles. These are the ones in the silos in North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, in that area. There's about a little over 400 of them. The exact number is classified, but everybody knows there are over 400 of those missiles. And it's part of what we call the triad. I'm going to really do what my wife Patty says you have to do, and that's, John, you got to control yourself, because you got me on a subject that goes for about a 5-hour lecture. So I'll try to make it as quick as I can. The triad, the land-based missiles, the bombers, together with the long-range cruise missiles that are on the bombers, and the, everybody grabbing for their phone, and the submarines. That's called the triad. We are right now in the first quarter of a new nuclear arms race with Russia and China. This is going to cost $1 trillion over the next 25 years. And it is rebuilding every bomb, every missile, every submarine, every bomber, and every cruise missile. It is extraordinarily expensive, and it is extraordinarily dangerous, because these are new, and all the rules of the Cold War don't apply anymore. Stealth bombers, stealth missiles, all kinds of things, many of which are classified, and I'm concerned, because it's money that won't be available for your transit. It's money that will not be available for your meals or for Alzheimer's or anything else. It's $1 trillion, and I'm concerned. The specific question had to do with the nature of the missiles and so forth. There is a plan to take all of the current Minuteman missiles, take them out and put in a brand new missile. Even though the current Minuteman are good for about the next 30 years. So there's a big question there. Major policy question. Very, very expensive question. And then there's the underlying question, what is this all about to begin with? And so we're going to wrestle with this. Congress is going to wrestle with it. I will tell you this, that the United States, Russia, and China are hell-bent on building a new nuclear arms race. We are, Russia is, and China is. And I'm going, wait a minute. Think about what this is all about. And are we working as hard on the disarmament question as we are on building this entire new system? So it's a major concern. Okay, enough of that one. Thank you for the question. I said I'd move off in this direction. Maybe there's some. Okay, then I'm going to wrap back around here. Here we go.
Okay, so I'm the new director over at the Highland Senior Center in Clearlake. One of the problems that I see, we'll bring it back to the seniors, by the way, one of the problems that we're having is funding being kept for other programs, but nutrition is really wonderful, but without the exercising and all of the other activities that need to keep them healthy, that also is falling behind, so there's not enough funding already, and then as things go on, and we're going to do nuclear war instead of taking care of our seniors, or our children, or vice versa. So these programs or funding is getting cut down. And so what is it that we can do to help let Congress know and let the state know that these are fundings that we really need, and we actually need more to help go towards exercise programs and stuff, because right now we're doing them, a lot of people just doing them, volunteering to help do those. But the reality is we need kind of a basis of where we can keep exercising going along with the food program and our congregate people coming in. And that's where the transportation part would come in, is we want to get these people out of their houses if we can, and into a facility where they will be able to be active and play cards and play games and do other things that all pertains to their health and keeping them healthy.
Very, very good question. Also, you must be very skilled at talking. When that photographer came up within 3 feet of you, didn't blink, you didn't change at all. And she's doing a great job, she really is. Keep doing it. I was just impressed by the way you just did what you were doing. How do we fund these things? People ask me what we do in Congress, and every day we make choices. We make choices about policy direction. We make choices about how to spend $3 trillion a year. Some of that is in Medicare, a lot of it is in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Choices about, can we have a Social Security cost of living increase that actually reflects what the seniors spend, not what the average family in America spends. and that would be a cost of living increase, which I think we ought to have, that reflects the cost of being a senior. You have different expenses. Right now, the cost of living for seniors is 0. 2 years ago, we added 1% to it because we thought it was the right thing. We made a choice, and we decided that we would increase by 1%. This year, probably there won't be an increase for Social Security, but there will be another, I don't know, $50 billion for new bombers. So it's choices, and we have a democracy. So in the large context, when we make decisions in an election, all of us are making a choice about the direction the country's going and the priorities of the country. I happen to agree with you about the priorities. Others don't. So as you go through the election process, pay attention. You can get caught up in the rhetoric, you can get caught up in the excitement of one candidate or another candidate, but behind all of that excitement, there are clear, or there ought to be, clear choices or clear directions that that candidate wants to take, whether it's president or Congress or supervisor or whatever. So you pay attention and you get to make a choice of direction. And I'll tell you right now, there is in the Congress of the United States, there is a debate going on about a $30 to $50 billion reduction in services for education, transportation, senior services of all kinds, food stamps, SNAP program, all of those things. Last December, a decision was made on a 2-year budget program that increased spending on a whole variety of programs. I just mentioned maybe half of them. There's an effort in Congress by the more conservative members of Congress right now to wipe out that agreement and to reduce somewhere between $30 and $50 billion money available for discretionary programs, senior service programs, in-home supportive services, Meals on Wheels, transportation, and the like. That'll be fought out over the next few months. I'll go back to Washington Monday, and we'll begin this process of trying to sort out the choices that we get to that we make on your behalf. It's an election year, and you'll get to make a choice on the directions you think things ought to go. That's the most important thing right now. Locally, your supervisors, the members of the Senate, California Senate, or the U.S. Senate for that matter, we'll have a new senator, and assembly members, supervisors, and so forth. It's a democracy. And we're right 6 months out from an election. And it'll be, I guess, a little more than 6 months, actually. Now, beyond the election, it's advocacy. I started with the men and women in purple. Nice looking color there. Purple. And the advocacy works. The advocacy works. That's a national program. The Alzheimer's Association is one other. The two of them work together, and they've had an effect. And we're now looking for an additional $300 and almost $400 million more for Alzheimer's research. We want to take it to $1,250 million for Alzheimer's research. So we're going to begin advocacy. I'll be talking about it and so forth. So individual advocacy does work. Yes.
That's great. Advocacy is really wonderful.
I'm all for that. Right now, here in Lake County, Alzheimer's have no place. We have one place that's for a few hours. I mean, I have people that come to my senior center that are just that person that was there trying to find out, need help with his wife. What can he do? He has no place to go. A couple hours a week just isn't enough for them to really go do anything. I mean, there has got to be some funding for research is wonderful, but we need to take care of the people that already have it. There's got to be funding for these to open up facilities where, whether they're an 8-hour-a-day facility, at least give somebody a break, 3 days a week even, where these ones that are just like 4 days a week, 1 day a week is just not even working here.
Okay, some of you are familiar with programs, and here's how it can happen. You got a senior center, You have respite care. Some of it's in home, but it could also be at a facility like this, depending upon we're talking Alzheimer's here, depending upon the degree of disability. It's possible that a community could put together a transportation program, could put together a senior center program that would provide respite care for 6, 7 hours, maybe 8 hours a day, to provide respite care. Now, it's not for every Alzheimer patient. As you can see from my mother-in-law, at the final 2 years of her life, it wouldn't work. Literally had to transfer her wherever she was going to go. But there are other cases, and you saw 2 of them, where respite care could work in a community center such as this. You could build that, you could put it together, providing that, say, 1 day a week for 6 or 7 hours, giving you enough time to go someplace. And that's a starting point. Is it possible? Yes. Is there enough money for that? You got to scramble. You got to, again, you're making choices in the community. I don't know the details, if it's really viable or not, but it does work, and it does happen. And there are different facilities that can be used. It may be that this facility doesn't have the appropriate kinds of, I don't know, tables, chairs, whatever else might be available. But there may be a long-term care facility that could be made available to provide respite care for 5, 6, 7 people a day at that facility. So you got to be innovative. Okay, we're going to move on and take several more questions before our time comes up.
I'll make it short. There's a lot of single seniors living at home, you know, and including my wife. She's got cancer and she's homebound almost. Sometimes I'm home and then we have a in-home care person, but she only comes like 3 days a week and goes home after so many hours. Like at night, in the evening when I'm not home and all. Things could happen. She could fall.
Sure.
And could Medicare in the future subsidize like a push-button emergency for special patients like my wife, you know, and disabled, and sometimes she can walk, sometimes she can't. And
that's a very interesting concept. That, and the question is, why couldn't we do that?
Yeah.
Somebody's in their home. They're either alone a lot of the time, or maybe all of the time, and these little emergency phones that you carry around your neck that would, you see the advertisements. Could that be part of a local program? Of course it could.
Well, I checked in, it's like $99, $97 a month, and we can't afford that, you know.
For sure you can't afford that. But is there some way to make that happen? The answer is probably there is. Can a community do that? Can the county do it? Can the state, can the federal government do it? Possibly. Would it make sense? Would it provide a necessary service? Yes. Could it be cheaper than $99? Oh, I suspect it could.
Yeah.
Interesting. Aside, I was insurance commissioner 9-10 years ago here in the state, and we had a tsunami. Okay? And the question came up, I guess I was lieutenant governor at the time. The question came up, how do you warn people on the beach that there's a tsunami coming? Well, it turns out we figured it out. We figured it out. We were working on this, and we were working with the cell phone companies and the like, and we started the process, and at 3 o'clock, 3 nights ago, a.m., early in the morning, my wife reaches over and bam, said, the phone's ringing. I said, I don't hear it. It's ringing. It was a flood alert on the cell phone. And I said, we happen to be at our ranch at 1,500 feet, and the nearest one was a mile away, but our home is down in the Delta. And it was a flood alert. It is exactly what could happen. There's technology that's available today, and it's usually in our pocket or in our purse, or in this case, next to our bed. And so there are ways we can do this, and there's people out there, I'm sure there's an app someplace. If there's not, we got a business opportunity, folks. But that's the kind of thinking. There's a need, somebody will figure it out, and we now have the communication systems available to us. So if you're on the beach and you have your cell phone nearby and you haven't lost it in the ocean, or it hasn't been sunk in salt water, there is an alert today to warn you there's a tsunami coming, and you probably ought to move a little bit higher up on the beach. Okay, I'm going to take a couple more questions. Yes?
Thank you. I would like to put a ray of sunshine on this rainy day. Years ago, when I was raising my family, a wise man told me once, he said, our generation will be living higher in the hog than any generation before us or after us. And I have seen this come true. I have volunteered at the Senior Center since 2002. I've seen a lot. And I also know that we have, in a way, I hate to insult you, but we have become spoiled rats. I mean, we complain about the food, we complain about the utilities going up, we complain about it. Take a look, like Irving Berlin said, count your blessings. I wouldn't even be here if it weren't for modern science. The heart attack and bypass and all the other stuff, my husband too. We are so fortunate to be here and most in pretty good health. What we need to do now is concentrate on the positive and work towards these goals that we want, rather than complaining about them. If you're complaining, then you should do something about it. And that's what I'm trying to do in the few years I might have left in my life. And I would hope that others would do the same. Please, count your blessings. We have so many, seniors are the best in the whole, try middle class, try raising a family nowadays. You know, try paying, you know, all the bills that they have, just a food bill. We are so much better off. We eat here for $4 or less, you know, a day, or none if we can't afford it. So people are looking out for seniors, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Margaret for
and I noticed your husband sitting there with that U.S. Army veterans cap. Tomorrow we actually in Fairfield, we have our Veterans Advisory Board. There's a whole series of veterans issues which normally come up in a meeting like this, but we haven't dealt with yet. Thank you. Thank you.
We'd like to have a raise next year, please.
Okay, she's a hard act to follow. With all the issues that are all very good issues for the seniors, and then when you're looking at Alzheimer's, I mean, you know, you're talking about diagnosis, you're talking about cures, you're talking about improving people's quality of life. But there's also the caregiver that in the home, that I can't quote any studies, but there's been studies that show that when you care for somebody, it actually shortens your life, and you're putting their health in jeopardy while they're caring for them. In all this effort to do something, how do you pick and choose which is a higher priority than the other? Because as the lady over there said, yes, it's great to find a cure, but we need something now for the people now. Not only the people with Alzheimer's, but their caregivers as well, which are usually their spouses or a child. How do you determine which is the higher priority in putting funding together, or what gets cut and what doesn't?
I guess that's why you hired me. That's my job, is to try to make choices about priorities. It's actually relatively easy, and there are thousands of pieces of legislation. And that doesn't include all of the appropriations, all of the choosing of where the money's going to go. I've got a pretty clear sense of what I think are important. It's people. And how do we do things that improve the quality of life of people? You mentioned the seniors. It's been a remarkable change. I remember, I must have been, maybe that big, living in Calaveras County. My family had been there since the 1860s, and my dad took me to the county hospital. It was not, to this day, I remember that day. It was a ward that the The sounds were horrible. The smells were terrible. And the people were dying. There was no Medicare. And that was the way we took care of seniors. Seniors didn't have insurance. And we've made enormous progress on the quality of life of seniors. And then we added Medicaid, Medi-Cal, for people that don't have income. So the quality of life of people has substantially improved. Medical services, the Affordable Care Act, 20 million people are now insured that 5 years ago did not have insurance. 20 million. That's 2/3 of the about 55% of the population of California. It is a huge improvement in the quality of people's lives across the country. We've seen improvements in the Medicare program. We talked about some of the Medicare drug program. That donut hole is closing. And there is developing, you can see this discussion, you saw it last night in the debate in Florida, you're going to see this in the campaign. We may finally be able to overcome the power of the pharmaceutical industry and give the federal government the power to bid, negotiate for the price of drugs for seniors. Can't do that now. So for me, I got a pretty clear idea of what we want to do. I care about the environment. Climate change. Our generation's doing okay. We got problems, to be sure. We're doing okay. In fact, compared to previous generations, we're doing very well. The next generation is going to have to deal with our excesses, meaning our excessive use of carbon energy. And climate change is very, very real. You know, the debate last night, again in Florida, they were talking, the question came up, what are you going to do about the flooding of Florida and every other coastal area? We're dealing with that. SFO, San Francisco Airport, Oakland Airport. Plans are being made today to deal with the rise of sea level that will flood those airports. You know, superstorms and all the rest. Anyway, those are a whole series of questions we have out there. I'm working on water programs for California, which we haven't talked about. And by the way, no tunnels, period. We don't need that. That's a $15 billion waste. So these things are all out there. Your question's a good one. And the final point I want to make is you. All of you. You help me make choices. You help me make choices when you tell me your concerns. We didn't get into water in great detail, but right now we're beginning the process of writing a new Water Resource Development Act. I'm on the Transportation Committee, I'm on the Subcommittee for Water Resources, and we will decide how to spend your tax money on new missiles in the silos in Montana, Wyoming rather, or to provide money for communities to rebuild their sanitation and water systems. We're going to make a decision on that. You heard from that film where I'm coming from. Okay, let me take one or two more quick questions, and then I think we're getting near the end of the story here.
I'm new to the area, and I live in Kelseyville, but I heard on the radio that in Lucerne, there have an additional water tax to the water bill, and I didn't know if someone could speak to that.
When you came up with the Lucerne question over there, I thought we were going to go in the direction of the water system in Lucerne. And I wasn't trying to duck it, but I figured I would get that question before much more time has gone by. It's a privately owned water system. It was public, then a company came in and purchased it, and now privately owned. And the question of what to do about the extraordinary rates and rate increases at Lucerne, and the question about the quality of services. I don't know, from the very first day I began to represent this area, it's been a question that's been brought to me over and over, and we've not found a solution to it. The cost of purchasing it and bringing it back to the community in a community public utility is pretty expensive. The funds for that are not available in the community. Are the funds available from the state? Maybe. The new Bond Act, Proposition 1, does have some money in it for community systems. It's a question whether the purchase of an existing community system by the community from a private company qualifies for that bond money. Big question for which I don't have an answer. At the federal level, Senator Feinstein and I are now putting together a water program for California. Part of that is infrastructure, about $1.3 billion, of which a piece of it is for community water systems. The way it's presently written, it's not clear that it would be available for Lucerne. It would be available for other communities in the area that do not have an adequate water system. Could be available to improve the water system. This is an ongoing issue in this community, and I guess you've got an answer.
General Manager.
Thanks. I'm Alec Gardner, who's the General Manager of your district here. What happens when somebody comes in and buys it, it's kind of like that idiot that bought the drug many people use and increased the price by 10,000% or something.
Yeah.
A private water company comes in, they pay for the system. They're now regulated by the Public Utility Commission. So you got a complaint, go there. But what they're entitled to do as a private water system is earn a rate of return on the investment they've made, regulated by the Public Utility Company, by the Public Utility Commission. So if you have the concerns that you've raised, you should go to the office there. They've got a public office for people. They'll look and they'll tell you the last time they had a rate case or what they've allowed, and you can do that. One of the reasons to support a water system like ours is that we're public. We're not private. And if we were to fail, then the same thing could happen, because the state would require this district to be taken over. And if it was a private company that took it over, the rates could double or more, because it would be entitled to do what we are doing with public money. We're getting public money to rebuild this system, long-term loans and grants. Private companies couldn't do that, but we can. So with Lucerne, call the Public Utility Commission, and maybe someday we'll be able to help you out.
A very good explanation, and this community of Lucerne, at my suggestion, did that, and they left unsatisfied. But they had a say with the Public Utility Commission on that issue. It's an ongoing problem. This is the privatization of public systems is always a debate in the community, in the country. And in fact, right now, there's before Congress passed out of the Transportation Committee 3 weeks ago to privatize the Federal Aviation Agency. And I go, what are you thinking? Anyway, I'm a no vote. I don't think it's going to happen. It became very controversial. But nonetheless, it did pass out of the committee. And there are those who think the privatization of the Federal Aviation Commission is a good idea. And I'm going, I fly back and forth to Washington almost every week. And it's been safe. And so what's broken about it, guys? Anyway, it's a good question about that whole issue. A couple of things. I just got one written question, and I'll try to deal with it very quickly. The California water system, I want you to go to my website. It's garamendi.house.gov. And go to the website, and there is a /water. garamendi.house.gov/water. And there's a program called Little Sip, Big Gulp. And in that, it's a water plan for all of California. It's a water plan that talks about the things that we need to do, and there's conservation, there is storage, it deals with the Delta, and it deals with Sites Reservoir. Sites Reservoir is just on the, which way am I looking? East. We'll look east. Sort of in that direction. You can get turned around on this lake, but we look at east. On the other side of the mountain from here is a place called Sites Valley. And Sites Reservoir off the Sacramento River would take water out of the Sacramento River, pump it into the reservoir, and be available to be used for many different purposes: environmental, agriculture, conservation, and so forth. I think it's an extremely important piece of legislation, of water infrastructure, and it is about 500,000 to 600,000 acre feet of annual water available, and it's 1.8 million acre feet of storage. It's a very large reservoir. And I think it's going to get built. It is in the legislation that Senator Feinstein and I are working on. It's in a piece of legislation that my Republican colleague Doug LaMoffitt and I introduced 4 years ago. We're moving it along. It's coming together. There's a joint power agency that's been formed to own and to manage and to put together the financing for it. So I think we got a pretty good shot at it. It's gaining momentum and traction. Now, I got a couple of things I want to do before we pull the plug and I head back into the Central Valley. When we started doing these senior roundtables, we wanted to recognize that in all of the communities, we did one in Oroville and over in Yuba City and I don't know, Rio Vista, I don't know, we've been going everywhere, 8 different communities in the district. And in here, in each of those communities, there are organizations and people that make it happen. We've talked about the volunteers. We've talked about people that are helping in so many different ways. And what we've done is to ask the senior center where we are doing these to, in their group, the leadership of the group, to choose somebody or some group to say thank you and to recognize what they've done, how they've provided services to the community. And so that happened. And this group of leaders in this senior center decided that they thought that this group called Meals on Wheels should be honored. So, come on up. This is no time to hide.
I have 2 of the drivers here.
Oh, you say. Tracy, you have drivers here?
2 of my drivers.
Well, bring your 2 drivers out.
Yeah.
Come on. We're going to check your driver's license. Come on up. Anybody else is so come on up. Okay, here we go. This is a congressional commendation, and these commendations are, oh, hang it up. It's my pleasure. This one goes to Tracy. You can put this in your office or any place you want to raise funds. Congressional commendation in honor of Meals on Wheels in recognition of distinguished services to the Lake County community. March 10th, 2016. It's with great pleasure that I recognize Meals on Wheels of Lake County for their longtime service and dedication to the local senior community. By providing meals for homebound disabled seniors, Meals on Wheels has helped alleviate significant challenge facing members of this community. Their comforting presence and support allow these seniors to age with security and dignity. On behalf of the people of California's 3rd Congressional District, please accept my sincere gratitude for this organization's contributions to the well-being of the community, as well as my best wishes for their continued engagement with the Lake County senior community. Okay. Now, you hold that, and I am not sure. Is your name Shannon? Oh, that's a winery. Shannon Ridge. Oh, okay.
You'll see it go downtown. Karen.
Karen, and
Ethel.
guess what? I've got yours here. Ethel, this is the same thing. There we go, photo opportunity. Hang on.
we're
And-
not eligible.
Well, you may not be eligible, but there are a whole lot of people that are, and when they knock on the door and they deliver it, they see health issues, they see problems, and they report it. David Farrell. David's not here also. And Bill Redd. Bill Redd. These are drivers that have provided the same services. And Judy Barnes. And these are the drivers that are not here with us today. However, Karen is. So, Karen, here we go.
Oh, Karen.
Did you bring your cheering section? Okay, thank you so very, very much. Thank you for all that you do. And, Trace, thank you so very, very much for the services that you provide. It's wonderful. And, okay, big hand to Meals on Wheels. Now, Senior Center here. Let's see, you have various activities. Did you do any gambling in this room?
No.
Not officially, that's the answer. Anybody play dominoes?
Yeah.
Well, I've got a set of dominoes that I want to give to the Senior Center for the hospitality that they've given us today. And so here it is, and it has this little thing, Congressman Garamendi on it. There we go. Thanks, Tracy. We said we'd be over at 3:30. Are we close enough to political time? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to call it quits to it. Thank you so very, very much for joining us. Have a good afternoon.